Once you've converted a few of your projects to JavaScript using Leopard, you might start to wonder what's up with yield. You keep seeing yield all over the place, and it doesn't seem to align with any particular Scratch block. And so you have to wonder, what is that and why is it there? Well, I want to answer that question, but in order to do it, we're going to start by experimenting with Scratch and see if we can notice some of the weird things that Scratch does behind the scenes. Alright, I'm going to make two simple scripts, and this should not be too surprising what happens. So I'm going to say when the A key is pressed on my keyboard, the cat should say A. And when the B key is pressed, the cat should say, when the B key is pressed, the cat should say B. This is pretty straightforward. I'm going to go and press A, and the cat says A. And then I go and press B, and the cat stops saying A and starts saying B instead. Right? So whichever say block, I can press it, I can go back and forth, whichever say block was run the most recently, that's what the cat will say. But what if I try something else? What if instead of these key pressed blocks, I do it when the green flag is clicked? Right? Because then you have to wonder, what will the cat say? It doesn't seem obvious. These scripts should both run at exactly the same time. And if we think that they're running at the exact same time, if two say blocks happen at the exact same time, which one gets said? Because it's not going to do both. Well, let's try it. I'm going to click the green flag, and the cat says B. That seems kind of random, right? But if I stop and click the green flag again, stop and click the green flag again, you can see it's consistent. It's always saying B. So it's not random. It's just weird. Well, what if I swap the say blocks? So I put this one over here and put this one over here. Now the cat says A. And again, that's consistent. Every time I click the green flag, the cat says A. So what must be happening in order for the cat to say A? Because this say B block is definitely running too. Why don't we ever see the cat say B? Well, what's happening is that Scratch is running this script first, the one with say B, and then, immediately after, it's running the script with say A. They're not actually running at the exact same time. These scripts are taking turns, and B goes first, but then immediately gets covered over by A. And it's so fast that you never even get a chance to see the cat say B. Now, one of the things that's interesting here is that I did some more experimentation, not while I wasn't recording, and it seems like whichever hat block, so that's things like when green flag clicked, when the space key is pressed, these sort of starter blocks, whichever one you dragged out most recently, whichever one got created last, that's the one that runs last. So if I drag out a new when green flag clicked and use it for B, now the cat will say B, because the B script is running last. It was the last block to be dragged out. Now it's the last script to run. And so you can actually kind of control this, which one runs first. But then we get into more interesting questions, right? We could try, here, I'm going to actually swap these again so that, actually no, I'm just going to put B on this side. So I've got it set up now so that the cat will say B, that B runs last. A goes first, then B, which means the cat says B. But what I want to try is a forever loop, right? Because now it's like, what's it going to do? These both run at the same time. We've got loops. Maybe it'll alternate back and forth. It'll say A and then say B and then say A and then say B. Let's see. Nope. It's just saying B, right? Even though we have this forever say A, we never see A show up at all. So I want to tell you exactly what's happening here. It turns out that Scratch scripts, they can't run at the same time, right? Scratch makes it look like they're running at the same time. If I do something a little bit simpler, if I say one of my scripts says move 10 steps and the other says turn 15 degrees, it looks like those are both happening, right? It seems like Scratch is running two scripts at the same time. They're even both glowing. But it turns out that actually scripts take turns. And what happens is we run a little piece of this script, and then a little piece of that script. And then we go back and run a little piece of this, and a little piece of that. And so what's so interesting about this is that there are certain times, I'm going to reset the cat to the center here. There are certain times when a script will say, you know what, I've gone for long enough. It's time for a different script to get a turn. And one of those times is at the bottom of a loop, like a forever loop. So if we walk this through really slowly, what's going to happen is I click the green flag. And Scratch is going to look for all the scripts that say when the green flag is clicked. And so this one is the first one that Scratch notices because this is the first when green flag clicked block that I actually dragged out. So it's going to find this one first and it's going to start to run it. So it'll go to the forever loop. It'll say, okay, I got to do this forever. I'll start by doing it once. It runs the say block. When it gets to the bottom of the loop, you might expect it to go back and do it again, but it doesn't, right? It goes through once, it says A once, and then it hits the bottom and it goes, you know what? This script has more to do, but if it went forever, all the other scripts would never get a chance to run. And so we need to pause this script, this A script right here. We'll come back to it, but for now, we're going to pause, and we're just going to stop right at the bottom of this forever loop and move on to doing something else. Then, because this is still immediately after clicking the green flag, Scratch says, I found another when green flag clicked script. So I'm going to run this one. You go to the forever loop, you say B. When you say B, you override the say A, right? So this never shows up because B happens right after. And then we hit the bottom of the forever loop, and this script also says, you know what? I'm going to pause. Come back to me later, but for now, I've done enough. Well then, now Scratch has gone through every script that's running right now. And so the last thing it does is it actually updates the screen. It changes, what the cat's speech bubble actually says so that it reflects the changes that were made. So what's interesting about that is that it's not just that it's too fast for your eyes to see, it's that the cat literally never says A on the screen. Internally, the thing that the cat is saying gets changed to be A, but the screen only updates once after every script has had a chance to run. And so, the screen updates, and the cat says B, and then Scratch says, okay, the screen has updated, I'm ready to do it all again. And so it goes and it looks and it says, which scripts are running right now? And the first one it notices is the A script. And so it says, well, I left off at the bottom of this forever loop, so I'll start up again at the top. And so it continues on and it goes, here's a say block. I'm going to say A. It hits the bottom and it says, okay, this is a place to pause. Then it moves to the next script. It says, I paused this one at the bottom. I'll go back to the top. I'll say B, and then I'll pause. Now it's run through all of the running scripts. So the screen updates. B was the last thing that the cat said, so B is what it continues to say on the screen, and the cycle continues. This is pretty complicated, and it gets more complicated as you have more scripts. There are more and more scripts that are all taking turns. But what's interesting is that every script has certain moments where it decides this is a good spot to take turns, to let some other script get in control. And so, one of the times that happens is at the bottom of a loop. So if you have a forever loop or a repeat loop or repeat until, those loops, when you get to the bottom, that script will pause and say, come back to me later and we'll do it all again. Another time that a script pauses is if you have something like a wait block, or maybe you have ask and wait, or broadcast and wait. All of these different sort of waiting blocks. These ones, isn't there a switch backdrop and wait? I guess not. All of these blocks will also cause the script to pause and say, come back to me later. One of the other interesting things, this is a feature that I think not everyone uses very often, but if you make a custom block, I'm going to call mine go super fast, right? And you check this run without screen refresh box, what you're essentially saying is, don't pause. If you have a repeat 10 loop, what you're saying is, do it all at once with no pauses. So if I just run this repeat loop on its own, you can see that the cat, you can sort of watch him move, right? Like it's because the screen is updating at the bottom every time you reach the bottom of the loop. So he moves and then the screen updates and he moves a little more and the screen updates. He moves a little more and the screen updates. Inside a no screen refresh custom block, when you run this, it's instant. And the reason it's instant is because there's no pausing at the bottom of the loop. It just does it 10 times, which is essentially the same as just saying move 100 steps. And then, after that's all done, then the screen updates. So you have this sort of interesting thing where, you know, you have to be careful about which scripts are running and which scripts are paused. And when it comes to converting your projects to JavaScript, that can be a little bit tricky, right? And one of the reasons that I didn't create Leopard sooner was because I just wasn't sure how you would go about, you know, translating that weird behavior where scripts sort of pause. Translating that into JavaScript seemed really hard. And so here is what I want to show you. By the way, you're probably figuring out what yield means by now. I'm going to try converting this project here that says forever move 10 steps and say A. You know what I'm also going to say when the green flag is clicked, go to 0, 0. There. We'll convert this to JavaScript. Whoop. And we're gonna do a little bit of investigation. This will take just a second to pop up, but you'll be able to see that what yield means in JavaScript is essentially pause this script and come back to me later. That's what this yield is. So you can see while true is like a forever loop, but at the bottom, yield is actually telling, you know, the rest of the JavaScript code, telling Leopard, really, this is a spot to pause and come back later. Now what's interesting is that yield is not always something that you can use, and it's actually something that's pretty uncommon to see in JavaScript code, but it's an option and it totally works. The reason you don't see yield very often is because it only works inside what's called a generator function, and that's what this little asterisk means right here. You could write a method without an asterisk, and it would still, you know, this function would still mostly work, except that you see I get the red squiggly underline that's telling me it didn't expect to see yield here. And that's because yield only works inside a generator function, which is essentially a pausable piece of code. All right, so this little asterisk says, hey, this code might pause at some point and ask for you to come back to it later. So that's what the yields are. That's why you shouldn't remove them. If you remove this, I mean, you can in some cases, but inside a forever loop, you probably don't want to. If you remove this yield and then run the code, the screen is never going to update and it's going to kind of freeze and lock up because all it's going to be doing is moving 10 and saying A over and over and over without stopping to do anything else. So especially in the case of a forever loop, the yield is really important. But there might be some cases, just like in Scratch when you use run without screen refresh, where you do want to remove the yield on purpose, and in that case you totally can. The other thing you can do is actually yield on purpose in more places than the automatic translation did for you. There's one other thing I want to show you, which is if you have one of those waiting blocks, like this ask block. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to make a little script that asks what your name is, and then says hello to you, your name. Right? So of course, I click the green flag, I type Josh, it says hello Josh. Great, that was fun. Now, I can go back to Leopard here, and it says, what's your name? And I type Josh, and it says, hello, Josh. Great, it's the same deal. But what's interesting in here is, like, how do you deal with the waiting when the one block takes a long time? And we can investigate that as well. So what you see here is we've got this dot ask and wait, which does exactly what it sounds like, but we've also got this yield star with a little asterisk at the end. This is different than a normal yield. What this is saying is, hey, the ask and wait function, which was provided by Leopard automatically, this ask and wait is actually a generator function too, right? This function also has a little asterisk internally. You can't see it here. But what that means is, essentially, keep running this, and whenever it yields, then the entire script should yield. That's what yield star is saying. So for your purposes, as a user of Leopard, you don't really have to know that. You can kind of just go with what the translator gives you, right? And know that, hey, yield star is just what I'm told to do. But if you're interested, it's worth knowing that what's happening is this script is also yielding over and over and over again. It's yield, 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 until you give an answer. And then it stops yielding and says, we got the answer. And this yield star is essentially saying just, hey, take whatever is happening inside of here, any yields that happen inside this method, and use them for my script. That's kind of strange, but it works. And so, it's pretty cool. That's really all I have to tell you. Essentially, the main takeaway is that yield is a moment where your script can pause, and Leopard, or Scratch, can go on to do something else, and then come back later. So these asterisks represent pausable scripts, and yield says this is a place to pause. Kind of strange. Generator functions like this are not something that you often see in just random JavaScript code on the internet, but it happens to be a really useful feature here. And so I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad that you're able to keep making projects with Leopard.